We went and hired Brad White, defensive coordinator from Kentucky, after their whole coaching staff got let go and they fired Mark Stoops. Brad White was on the market. We went and attacked and got him. Him and John Summerall worked together at Kentucky, I believe, in 2021, when John Summerall was on the staff. Brad White has been the official offensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator, sorry, there from 2019 to 2025. So that is 6 years. He was the I think outside linebacker coach for them in 2018. He just some quick stats before we get into all the like efficiency stuff. He runs a 4-3 defense, pretty traditional. That's kind of that Mark Stoops type style, with the two high safeties. Definitely the bend don't break style defense. He will go 3-4 sometimes, with the three linemen. In the four linebackers, which I personally like 3-4 a lot more than 4-3, but that's just me. So I like to see that. It's also what John Summerall runs, is a 3-4 usually. So I'm assuming that's what they're going to do coming to Florida, which I'm really excited about with these talented linebackers we do have. He has developed some really nice NFL talent. Josh Allen, Josh Paschal, Maxwell Hairston. I think he has 6 picks in the first 2 rounds on the defensive side of the ball since he's been at Kentucky. So all those guys are still in the NFL, dominating. So really cool to see from that standpoint. Yeah, this guy's had pretty successful defenses his time there at Kentucky. A couple years where he's had really good defenses. And like I said, I'm going to dive into all those stats over the past 6 years, and just so you guys can do do whatever you want with the information I'm going to give you there. But EJ, how do you feel about this hire overall when you got the news?
Yeah, real quick. I was really excited about this hire. A lot of people are saying, oh, he doesn't hire his friends. Why do you hire it? Just because they work together doesn't mean they're best friends. That means they respect one another. You work with people. That's how you meet people. And he had great respect for Brad White and what Brad White brings to the table from a defensive coordinator standpoint. I actually, in going and looking at the Kentucky defenses of the last 4 years, 5 years, I have a lot of respect for Brad White as well. The thing about coaching, less talented players, that are 2-star, 3-star players, are typically more coachable initially than the more talented players. The more, 4 or 5-star players, when you get all those talented players on one team, it's all about me, 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 and it's hard to coach those guys. So good coaches, like the Urban Meyers, the Kirby Smarts, are able to make those 5 stars feel like they're crap, feel like they're not that great, so that they become coachable. So that will be sort of the challenge for Brad White, because you're going to be coming into a scenario where you're going to have access to more talented players, and it's how do you get those players feeling like they're coachable and putting them into the right position. He's got a lot of experience. His NFL background. I think it was offense. Outside linebacker coach with the Colts. He developed 14 NFL draft picks. That is important, because when you have a defensive coordinator, and these 14 NFL draft picks, guys, were at Kentucky. I think we had 16 at Florida, which in that same time frame, which for him to have almost just as many at Kentucky, and these guys were lower recruited rankings than our guys, shows about, talent development. He also understands what an NFL player looks like. And at Florida, he's going to be able to put an NFL capable player at every position. And that's really what it's all about, is every single position has to be the best in the country at what they're doing on defense. That was the philosophy for Nick Saban. That's why he won so many championships. I look at every single position: D tackle, right edge, left outside linebacker, middle linebacker. We have to have the best player in the country at each position. And I think Brad White has that same philosophy. The Kentucky defense, a lot of people, well, they play bend but don't break, and the Kentucky fans were like, yeah, he could leave, he could leave. that's complete. These people are complete idiots. Let me tell you something. First of all, your offense can't score. Your offense, you got shut out against Louisville. You couldn't score. So what does that mean? That means your defense has to basically play risk-free football the whole game just so that your sorry ass offense has a chance to get back in the game. So you have to play this umbrella style defense to keep the other team from making big plays because when you hit a 30, 20 or 30-yard play on a drive, the chances of you scoring go up by what is it, 60%, 70%, something like that. So Kentucky had to play this umbrella defense all year because their offense was so bad the last couple of years. And so I think you won't have that same issue at Florida because presumably, when we'll talk about the offensive coordinator, we'll be scoring, so the defense will be able to come out there and take a little bit more risks in terms of how they approach. But overall, I think this is a very, very solid defensive coordinator hire. When you think about all the top defensive coordinators in the country, where they were going, where they're going to be head coaches, where they're going to go to top programs. This is one of the top defensive coordinators that we could have gotten. He gets along with the head coach. The head coach trusts him. I'm really happy about this hire. And remember, he was I believe they were on the same staff in 2021 when we went up there to Lexington, and we could barely. I think they blocked the field goal, ran it back. We couldn't score. Dan Mullen couldn't figure anything out. So pretty good defensive coordinator.
I will say this: I'm not as high on him as EJ. I think that he's a good hire. I think he's a really good hire. I don't think he's a great hire. I think it's going to be really interesting because he's only been a defensive coordinator at Kentucky, right? So how much of that Mark Stoops influence did he really have on that defense? And that's what I'm curious to see. I do think that John Summerall wouldn't hire him if he didn't think that he could be that aggressive. Hard no. I mean, he literally talked about it. He said, we want a defense that people fear, right? And so, yeah, and you're right. You're right. I am really curious about that when you said that, UK didn't have great DBs. Yeah, they only had a few good DBs that kind of, came out every now and then. So I'm really, really curious to see, like you said, what he does with the talent at UF and what he does with just that an offense that's actually going to be able to move the ball. So I just want to kind of go through some of the metrics here and some of the statistics with you guys. And since we're on talent, we can kind of talk about that. So the past 5 years past 6 years he's been at Kentucky, out of the 24/7 talent composite, they were the 34th, 26th, 31st, 26th, 31st, 24th, and 27th ranked team in the country when it comes to talent. While Florida is consistently, around 15 to like 6, around there. And so we're a top 15 talent. They were top 30 on average. And so he's going to have, pretty much double the talent right there, EJ, which I think is massive. Surtain, the defensive back coach. Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be a great pickup. But yeah, so like you said, he's going to have a lot more talent to play with here. I went through, and there's 4 different metrics that I love to look at, AJ, and that's the defensive ranking, overall total defense, drive efficiency, explosive rank, and then the play efficiency. I have a really cool website I like to look at that has those 4 statistics there. And overall, these numbers aren't abysmal. We'll get into that. So if you want to disregard 2020 and disregard this past year, they're not bad. 2020, obviously no one had defense that year, right? No one was practicing. That was just kind of a weird year, so we can kind of throw that away. 2025, they dealt with a lot of injuries, and just, horrible offense as well, not great. And you saw that too. When their offense was playing good against Florida, their defense is locking us down. Now, let's take a look at 2024, right? Just kind of, I would say the last one you can kind of look at. The 45th ranked defense in the country. Their drive efficiency was 28th in the country, which is pretty good considering the talent of 24th in the country. Explosive rank, they were 31st, and play efficiency, they were 56th. those are pretty above average numbers, decent in the SEC. 2023. This is one that we can kind of take a look at, and I won't go back any further than this. They were 47th in the country. The drive efficiency was 119th. Now, what is drive efficiency? Drive efficiency means like kind of, and you'll see by these other two statistics I give you, you'll be like, why the hell is that so high and these are so low? Drive efficiency is basically like, how are you actually stopping teams from getting points, right? You can have a really bad play efficiency, but a really good drive efficiency and vice versa. And that's what happened this year. They had the 12th play efficiency in the country. So play by play, they were doing good, but and even explosive rank, they were number 18th. But just teams were finding ways to score and kind of have control, consistent control, which is kind of that, bend don't break style defense. That's kind of an issue. So that's kind of a wild outlier. But like I said, 18th explosive rank, 12th in play efficiency, which is kind of what I'm mainly worried about. And so I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty happy with this hire. It's not not my favorite. But it could have been definitely 10 times worse. The guys have worked with each other, so that cohesion's going to be there. This guy develops linebackers like no other, and so imagine Miles Graham under this guy who's already great. Imagine Aaron Childs, and some of these other guys that we're bringing in, these young guys like Ty Jackson, right? These young freshmen we haven't even seen yet. I think that he's going to develop these guys very well, and I'm really excited to see that. Really curious to see who he brings in at positional, these position coaches, EJ. I know we mentioned Surtain in the chat, but I think overall our defense is going to be, if he was having, like I said, defensive ranking, I'll just name these out before I end on this. 2019 37th, 2020 48th, 2021 22nd, 2022 16th, 2023 47th, 55th, and then, 47th, 45th, and then 52nd. He's going to definitely double that, right? So our defense is going to consistently be a top 20, top 15 defense mixed with a really good offense. I think it can be deadly. So yeah, I think it's a really good, safe, good hire, that I'm definitely pleased with.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. And, they had seven straight, I believe, from 2018 to 2024, even though he wasn't there in 2018. Um, Top 45 defenses. And um, I don't think we had, I think we had what, one defense that was ranked in the top 45. I think we're 65th this year or something like that. So even though our defense, I think, played really well in the earlier part of the year, and then the statistics in the Ole Miss, Tennessee games just really dropped our defense, off the map. In 2019, Kentucky was the 13th nationally in scoring defense, which is also how I would define um, defensive efficiency. I like to interplay the basketball and football. Basketball off defensive efficiency is points per possession. So how many points do you give up every time the other team has possession of the ball relative to everyone else in the country, adjusted for strength of schedule? In football, points per play. Last year, Ole Miss had one of the top defensive efficiency teams in the country. They were giving up, I think it was like 0.17 points per play. These are stats that really tell you who a really good defense is. That's why I really like Texas Tech. Their defensive efficiency from a points per play standpoint is one of the top out there. Now, you say, well, they didn't play anyone. Well, yeah, but they beat everyone just as bad as who Ohio State or Georgia would have beat them by. I mean, they were beating teams like 52-7, you know? So, uh, points per play, they were top 20 in the nation, three of the seasons that he was there, which is absolutely great. Um, the year before last, 2023, they were 113 yards rushing a game, which was second in the SEC, 17th in the nation. They had 35 sacks that year. I remember we went a few seasons prior to last year, where in 2019, Grantham had, I believe, 51 sacks on the season. And the first 2.5 years of the Billy Napier era, we had like 42 sacks total in 2.5 seasons. We had more sacks in 1 year under Grantham than the first 2.5 years under Napier. So I don't think we'll have an issue getting to the quarterback. Um, sacks absolutely kill drives. Though there's a very important uh, measure. But then lastly, I also think it's complementary football. I know that, people don't like that since Billy Napier was saying it, but it is a term outside of, Billy Napier. And that just means your defense has to match the offense that you bring to the table. So, if your offense is a wide open, explosive, spread the ball, we want to try to score 40 points a game, kind of like Tennessee, well, then your defense has to have a really good defensive line that gets pressure because the other team is now going to be in a position where, oh crap, we have to keep up with these guys. Like we have to score points. So they're going to go to shotgun spread, change the playbook, try to throw the ball. And if you have this slow defensive line that can't get pressure because your defense is based on stopping the run, well, the other team isn't going to even try to run the ball. That was the issue with LSU back in 2019, even though they won the national championship. Their defensive statistics weren't really that good because, they would get up by so many points and the other team would go no huddle, 2 minute drill offense, and their defense really couldn't create pressure. So it just depends on the offensive style, which we'll talk about too. Does the offense want to play keep away? Do we want to run the ball? Are we going to be a little bit more of a passing team? And then I think the defense complements that with the style of play that they're going to have. But then also you have to build your defense to be successful against the schedule that you're playing. So the best couple of teams on the schedule every year are going to be Georgia, which that is an NFL style, you know, almost like Kansas City Chiefs style offense where it's like, no matter what you do, no matter what your defensive stance is, they know where the weak point is. They know how to go to it, and their quarterback is smart enough to immediately go to it and throw the ball on target. So you have to have a very disciplined defense uh, to play against something like that, which I think he will. I think this will be the best defense that we've seen at Florida in a while. Um, and that's saying a lot because we have had a couple of seasons where he had really good defenses, um, at Florida, and that was basically from talent alone. So we'll see what happens. He runs kind of like this 3-4-4-2-5 looking kind of front. But the thing that I like about Kentucky when we've played them the last couple of years, um, when they line up, you can tell a lot about how good a defensive coordinator is from how the defense lines up before the snap of the ball. Um, our team typically, you know, Ron Roberts will surrender certain routes immediately just from the way the defensive formation is aligned, and it's whether or not the quarterback's smart enough to realize that and immediately go to it. Um, when we've played Kentucky, it doesn't look like they surrender anything initially, and your quarterback just has to be really, really good at, you know, post snap reads, progressions, and delivering the ball with accuracy when you're playing against Kentucky. And then, having injuries and receivers out of the game and all that, that really hurts. But I think this is going to be a really good defense under Coach White. So we'll see what happens.
It'll be interesting for sure. Very excited to see what they implement, what exact formation they go with. Like I said, I'm praying it's a 3-4 because I love that. So we will see. And like you said, that even helps getting to the quarterback, right? 3-4, you can disguise so much stuff. It's like, who the hell's coming? You genuinely don't know. So that's why I'm a big fan of that. So we'll see.